ends now. Get back here and explain what this letter means. You can't sell a house with occupants. That's illegal. Actually, Dad, it's completely legal when the occupants aren't on the deed and have no lease agreement. But thanks for playing. I blocked all their numbers and continued driving. Daniel was waiting for me at our hotel in Denver. Champagne chilling and takeout containers from my new favorite restaurant spread across the small table. "How do you feel?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me as I collapsed into his chest. "Free," I said, and meant it completely. Terrified, but free. "Any regrets?" I thought about Thomas's new ski jacket, Kevin's casual attitude about expensive equipment, my mother's designer resort wear, my father's fully equipped workshop. I thought about months of working overtime while they lived comfortably on my dime. I thought about their laughter when they called me a burden they wished would disappear, not one. My phone buzzed with notifications from Facebook, Instagram, and email as they found other ways to contact me. I turned it off completely. "Tomorrow we start looking at houses," Daniel said, refilling my champagne glass. "Our house, our rules, our life, our mortgage payment that we split equally." I added with a grin. "Our grocery bills that we budget together, our utility costs that we monitor responsibly, our furniture that stays where we put it." We toasted to our future, and for the first time in months, I felt like I was drinking to celebrate my own life instead of drowning my frustrations. That night, I slept better than I had in months, knowing I was 500 miles away from people who saw my love as weakness and my kindness as an invitation to take advantage. The next chapter of my life was about to begin, and this time I was writing it myself. The voicemails kept coming for 3 days, even though I'd blocked their primary numbers. Somehow they found ways to reach me, probably using friends' phones, workplace numbers, even what sounded like a payphone in one desperately scratchy message. I didn't listen to most of them, but the few I accidentally heard told the whole story. Day 1. Confusion and disbelief. "This has to be a mistake. You would never do something this cruel." Day 2. Anger and threats. "We'll contest this sale." "You can't abandon your family. We'll sue you for everything." Day 3. Bargaining and manipulation. "We know you're hurt, but we can work this out. Come home and we'll discuss reasonable boundaries." Reasonable boundaries. That was rich coming from people who turned my home into their personal kingdom without asking permission. But the message that finally made me laugh out loud came from Thomas on Thursday morning. "This isn't fair. We're basically homeless now. How are we supposed to find a place to live in 20 days? And I have finals coming up. You're ruining my education. Your education, Thomas, that I'd been subsidizing while you spent your job money on ski equipment and video games. The education that was supposedly so important my wedding had to take a backseat to your family's financial needs." Daniel found me deleting voicemails while drinking coffee in our hotel room. "Still coming?" he asked, sitting beside me on the bed. 20. 3 new messages since yesterday. They're getting creative with the guilt trips now. What's the latest strategy? Apparently I'm single, handedly destroying Thomas's academic future and Kevin's sports opportunities. Also, my mother might have a stress-induced heart attack, and my father's unemployment benefits are being delayed due to bureaucratic complications. The greatest hits collection. The best part is they're staying in my house while sending these messages, eating food from my refrigerator, using utilities I'm still paying for until closing, sleeping in beds I bought. And somehow I'm the villain in this story. My phone rang again, a number I didn't recognize with a local area code from back home. Against my better judgment, I answered, "Hello." "Callie, thank God. It was Susan from next door, my neighbor. They were recruiting my neighbors now. Susan, I'm sorry they dragged you into this. Honey, are you okay? Your parents are telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown. They're saying you disappeared without warning and left them homeless." I closed my eyes. Of course they were playing the victim card to the neighborhood. "Susan, I'm fine, and they're not homeless. They have 20 days to find their own place, which is more notice than most people get. But they said, I mean, your father mentioned they were helping you with mortgage payments. The lies were spreading faster than wildfire. Susan, I've been supporting 4 adults for months while they lived in my house rent-free. They never paid a dime toward my mortgage. Silence on the other end. I have to ask. Susan said carefully, because your mother was crying pretty hard. Is it true you sold the house without telling them? I sold my house, yes. The house I own, that I pay for, that has only my name on the deed. Oh, another pause. She made it sound like, well, like you were all living there together as a family arrangement. We were, until I found out they saw me as a burden they wished would disappear. Jesus, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. After I hung up, I realized this was probably happening all over my old neighborhood. My parents were telling anyone who'd listen that their poor, unstable daughter had cruelly abandoned her loving family. The narrative would stick to, people love a good victim story, especially when it involves ungrateful children and suffering parents. But for the first time in months, I didn't care what people thought. The people whose opinions mattered. Daniel, my real friends, my co-workers who'd watched me struggle. They knew the truth. You know what the crazy part is. I told Daniel as we drove around Denver looking at potential neighborhoods. I actually feel guilty, like maybe I should have given them more warning, more time to adjust. They had 4 months to adjust. 4 months to look for their own place, to contribute to expenses, to treat you like family instead of a resource. They chose not to. I know that logically. And emotionally, I feel like the worst daughter in the world. That's because they trained you to feel that way. Every time you set a boundary, they made you feel selfish. Every time you asked for respect, they made you feel unreasonable. That programming doesn't disappear overnight. He was right. I've been conditioned to believe that good daughters sacrifice everything for family harmony, that love meant never saying no, never prioritizing my own needs, never expecting reciprocity. But sitting in that car, looking at houses where Daniel and I might build our actual life together, I realized something important. Real love doesn't require you to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Real family doesn't see your kindness as weakness to exploit. And real parents don't call their daughter a burden behind her back while smiling to her face. I was done feeling guilty for refusing to be their personal ATM with feelings. 6 weeks later, I was standing in the kitchen of our new house in Denver, wearing my wedding dress and watching Daniel adjust his tie in the reflection of our microwave. "Ready, Mrs. Coleman?" he asked, grinning at my reflection. "Ready, Mr. Coleman." We'd gotten married at the courthouse that morning with 2 witnesses Daniel recruited from his new job site. No family drama, no financial stress, no guilt trips about wedding expenses. Just 2 people who loved each other, making it official in front of a judge who probably performed a dozen ceremonies that day. It was perfect. The house was perfect too. 3 bedrooms in a quiet neighborhood with a backyard big enough for the dog we were planning to adopt and the kids we hoped to have someday. Most importantly, the mortgage payment was something we could afford together without either of us working overtime or sacrificing our dreams. Any regrets? Daniel asked for the 100th time since we'd signed the papers. About the wedding, the house, or the family situation. All of it. I looked around our kitchen, our dishes in our cabinets, our coffee maker on our counter, our wedding photos stuck to our refrigerator with magnets we'd chosen together. Not one. My new job at a Denver architecture firm was everything I'd hoped for. Better salary, reasonable hours. Colleagues who respected my work instead of treating me like an inexhaustible resource. I was designing buildings again instead of just managing other people's financial crises. Daniel was thriving too. The construction company had promoted him to project supervisor within his first month, and he came home every day excited about his work instead of stressed about family dynamics. "Your phone's been quiet today," he observed, pulling our wedding cake from the refrigerator. It had been quiet for 2 weeks now. After blocking 17 different numbers, changing my social media settings, and having a lawyer send a cease, And desist letter. My family had finally gotten the message, or so I thought. The next morning, I was getting ready for work when Daniel called from the living room. You need to see this. I found him standing by our front window, holding back the curtain slightly. Don't look obvious, but there's a car across the street that's been there since I left for my run. Someone sitting in it. My stomach clenched. What kind of car? Blue Honda Civic. Colorado plates, but it looks like a rental. Thomas drove a blue Honda, but Thomas was supposed to be in California, finishing his senior year at the high school near my old house. I peeked through the curtain and felt my blood pressure spike. It was definitely Thomas, and he was staring directly at our front door. How did he find us? Social media, public records. Does it matter? Daniel was right. How Thomas had tracked us down was less important than what to do about it. I'm calling the police, I said, reaching for my phone. Wait. Daniel caught my hand. Let me talk to him first. He's just a kid, and he came a long way. Maybe he just needs closure. Against my better judgment, I let Daniel walk outside. I watched from the window as he crossed the street and approached Thomas's car. They talked for about 5 minutes before Thomas drove away. What did he say? I asked when Daniel came back inside. He wanted to apologize. Kevin drove him here, but Thomas wanted to talk to you alone. Said your parents have been fighting constantly since you left, and your father lost his workshop clients because he had to move out of your basement. Your mother's been crying every day, and he's starting to understand why you did what you did. Apparently living with your parents without you there to buffer everything has been educational. I felt a pang of sympathy for Thomas, but not enough to regret my decision. What else? He asked if there was any way to fix things, if you'd consider talking to them. What did you tell him? I told him that bridge was burned, but maybe someday there could be a new one. Different terms, different boundaries. Daniel was probably right. Thomas and Kevin were victims of our parents' manipulation too, in their own way. They'd been raised to believe that family meant unlimited access to each other's resources and unlimited forgiveness for bad behavior. Maybe someday, when they were adults living their own lives, we could have some kind of relationship, but not today, not while they were still living under my parents' roof and dependent on their version of reality. I'll send him a letter. I decided, let him know I don't hate him, but I can't have a relationship with any of you while Mom and Dad are still controlling the narrative. That seems fair. That afternoon, I wrote the most difficult letter of my life. I explained to Thomas that I loved him and Kevin, but I couldn't expose myself to further manipulation from our parents. I told him that if he ever wanted to understand my side of the story, he could contact me after he turned 18 and was living independently. I mailed it to his school address and tried to put the whole thing behind me. 3 months later, I got an email from Kevin. Thomas showed me your letter. I think I get it now. Mom and Dad are talking about moving in with Uncle Frank because they can't afford their own place. But they just bought a new entertainment center and Dad's looking at truck catalogs. It doesn't add up. Maybe we can talk when I graduate. Maybe we could, but that was a bridge for the future, not the present. 2 years later, I was in my garden planting tomatoes when Daniel brought me the phone. It's Thomas, he said quietly. He says it's important. I wiped the dirt off my hands and took the call, my heart racing with possibilities. Good news, bad news, family emergency, another manipulation attempt. With my family, anything was possible. Hello, it's Thomas. I know you said to wait until I was 18, but something happened, and I thought you should know. He sounded older, more serious than the kid who'd been demanding ski equipment 2 years ago. What happened? Dad had a heart attack. He's okay, but he's in the hospital, and Mom's freaking out about medical bills again. I felt the familiar tug of guilt and obligation, but it was fainter now, like an old scar that aches when it rains but doesn't really hurt anymore. I'm sorry to hear that. Is he going to be okay? Yeah, doctors say it was mild, but listen, they've been living with Uncle Frank for 8 months now. His wife is going crazy because they're doing the same thing to Frank's family that they did to you. I wasn't surprised. Leopards and spots, as they say. Mom keeps saying this is all your fault. Thomas continued that if you hadn't been so cruel and selfish, none of this would have happened. But Kevin and I have been talking, and we think maybe you had the right idea. Thomas, no, let me finish. We lived with them for 6 months after you left, and it was hell. They fought constantly, blamed each other for losing your house, made everything everyone else's fault. Kevin moved in with his girlfriend's family just to get away from the drama. I'm staying at school as much as possible. This was what I'd hoped for but never expected. My brother beginning to see our parents' behavior clearly instead of through the lens of family loyalty. I'm proud of you for recognizing unhealthy patterns. I said carefully, that takes courage. You talk to them, not for them, but for us. Kevin and I miss you, and we're tired of being in the middle of this family war. I looked out at my garden, my peaceful backyard, my life that I'd built from scratch after escaping their chaos. Did I want to invite any of that dysfunction back in? I'll think about it, I said finally. But Thomas, you need to understand, if I have any relationship with Mom and Dad, it will be completely different from before. I won't be their financial backup plan or their emotional punching bag. I won't tolerate manipulation or guilt trips. And I won't let them treat Daniel with disrespect. I get it, and honestly, good for you. Someone needed to set boundaries with them years ago. After we hung up, I sat in my garden for a long time, thinking about family and forgiveness and the difference between reconciliation and surrender. Daniel found me there as the sun was setting. So, he asked, settling beside me on the wooden bench he'd built last spring. I'm thinking about it. Limited contact, strict boundaries, maybe holiday cards and occasional phone calls, but only to maintain some connection with Thomas and Kevin. And your parents? They're still my parents. I don't have to like them or trust them or support them financially, but I can probably manage to be civil for the sake of my brothers. That's very mature of you. 2 years of therapy will do that. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the Colorado sunset paint the sky in shades of orange. And Pink, our dog Scout, a rescued golden retriever, wandered over and flopped down at our feet with a satisfied sigh. This was my life now, peaceful, predictable, built on mutual respect and shared responsibilities. Daniel and I split everything equally. Bills, chores, decisions, dreams. Nobody kept score because nobody was taking advantage. My parents had taught me what family shouldn't look like. Daniel had shown me what partnership could be. You know what's funny? I said, scratching Scout behind the ears. What? They got exactly what they wanted. I disappeared from their lives. They just didn't expect it to come with consequences. Do you think they've learned anything? I thought about Thomas's description of their ongoing financial chaos, their cycle of dependency from one family member to the next, their continued refusal to take responsibility for their own choices. Probably not. But that's not my problem anymore. 6 months later, I sent a brief email to my parents. I told them I was willing to maintain limited contact for Thomas and Kevin's sake, but that any relationship would require acknowledgement of past harm and commitment to respectful boundaries going forward. Their response was predictable, a mixture of defensive justifications and tearful manipulations. They were hurt that I could hold a grudge so long. They were disappointed that I'd choose strangers over family. They were confused about why I couldn't just forgive and forget. I didn't engage with manipulation. Instead, I sent one final message. I'm available for civil conversation when you're ready to take responsibility for your actions. Until then, my contact will be limited to Thomas and Kevin. That was 3 months ago. I haven't heard from them since, but Thomas and Kevin both have my phone number now, and we text occasionally about normal sibling things, their jobs, their relationships, their plans for college. It's not the close relationship we might have had in a healthier family, but it's something, and something is enough. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about standing up to family manipulation and building the life you deserve. Remember, you can love your family and still protect yourself from their dysfunction. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is refuse to enable destructive behavior. What would you have done in my situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.